Hey everyone, it's Andrew Nagel with Valk9 Designs, back for the next part of this start-to-finish complex pendant design. Here we're going to build the stone settings for, well, the final stone settings for this Super 7 cabochon and also for the Ethian Opal cabochon up at the top of the pendant. One of the first things I'm going to do is just check out this opal just to make sure it's sitting where I want it to, and I feel like I should bend this wire over just a little bit. Just kind of change this. We're ultimately going to cover these wires with more wires, so it doesn't really matter what these, kind of look like right now. We'll polish them up as well. But we're going to just bend that over just to open up this setting right here next to this opal. That way, that wire doesn't push against the opal and push it out of where we want it to sit. Much better. Even kind of acts as a little bit of a setting itself there and kind of holds the opal more where we need it to be. So now that we've got that fixed up, it's time to add in some more detailing wires at the bottom of this cabochon. Go ahead and feed a length of 21 gauge square through the bottom of the cabochon and attach it to the back. Once you've attached your 21 gauge square, go ahead and flatten it out along the length of your cabochon. What I mean by that is just flatten it so it's not sticking up straight and it runs flush against the cabochon. And then you can start to bend that 21 gauge along the length of your channel set rainbow stones, or whatever stones you ended up setting on the side. I used a Roy G. Biv set of sapphires, as well as a morganite in there, I'm pretty sure, at the top. Yeah. It's been a while since we set the stones, and so I was kind of forgetting what was in there. But basically you're just going to run this 21 G square along the length of the channel setting, or just the outer shape of this cabochon, whatever shape of cabochon you used. If you used a circular stone, go ahead and make that kind of circular around it, or if you're building like a textile setting, you can make it angled. And so then the next thing I'm going to do is attach another length of 21 gauge square into that same kind of port where I set the first length of 21G. And now I'm going to run that one kind of straight up along the middle part of that stone, and then I'm going to use 30G silver round to attach these two lengths of 21G square together. I'm making kind of like a fanning open X-weave pattern. It's kind of like the same deal as the spiral weave detail, even though these are just, even though these are angled in kind of a geometric way, more of an angular way instead of a flowy way. You're going to put more 30G on the length that has more surface area to be covered, and so that's going to be this wire sitting on the outside of the stone. And so what I'm doing is twice around the inner wire, and then twice around the outer wire, twice around the inner wire, then 3 times around the outer, then 4 times, then 5 times, while only staying twice on the innermost wire with that 30G to create kind of a fan open effect. And then once I've reached to that first bend with that fan where it fans open, I'm going to then bend my 21G square on the inner side. I'm going to bend that so that way it comes over flush with my innermost, or I'm sorry, the outermost 21G square for this setting. That way it makes just kind of like an angular little pattern right there. I've basically just made 2 90-degree bends, making, like a right and then a left turn in this wire. And then I'm going to connect them together with the 30G round. I'm running the 30G on the outermost wire, up this length of the Super 7 cabochon. I'm going to attach it to the innermost 21G square wire by wrapping the 30G all the way around both of the square wires to create kind of like a little block right there, and then I'm going to continue just on the outermost wire, and then I'm going to do that again to create kind of a thicker little block. Then I'm going to run the 30G on the outermost wire, and then again I'm going to wrap it around there. Basically what I did is twice on the first wraparound, then 3 times when I've connected both wires, and then 4 times when I've done my last wraparound here, and then I'm going to run that 30G along the outermost wire up to the final opening of these two 21G square up here near the top of the stone. I've pre-opened this wire up here near the top, and basically what I'm going to have this do is just split open, have about a centimeter gap near these wires at the top, and just have them run parallel, and then my outermost wire is going to continue to run up the length of the opal, while the innermost wire will be set down onto the top of this cabochon to help hold it into place. Using that 30G to make an X-weave pattern between these two wires. At first I had a little bit of a fan to build, so I did that same sort of progression type of X-weave, and then now what I'm going to do is just do an even X-weave. I'm going twice around each side and then connecting it over to the next side, and then back over twice around, and then back over twice around, just to keep the X-weave pattern, you know, even and looking, you know, nice and evenly spaced there. And then these two 21G wires are going to fan open again, so I'm going to start to build another little bit of an angular fan to make this X-weave pattern kind of start to angle up a little bit. Then I'm going to continue with that 30G up along the length of the outermost wire once I've built that fan up to a point where I like it. I'm kind of building this fan up to like where the butt of the opal will be. That's not a professional term, but that's just like where the cabochon is going to be touching, you know, this little fanned open portion here. Again, we're going to be covering, adding more wires into this fan, so it doesn't have to be perfect here, but keep your wires as tight and as even as possible. So that looks right about where the bottom of the opal will be, and so I'm going to start to attach my innermost wire down to the frame, adjust that just a little bit, and make sure it's running flush along the stone. Then I'm going to send that wire back and connect it to one of my supports here. I'm using a length of 21G square, and I'm feeding that through kind of the top part of my channel here where I've left some space open in the weave of those bottom 21G square. I'm going to utilize this to build a bit more of a support and some more detailing to the right side of the opal setting. Attaching that to the back. It really doesn't matter where you make your attachments on the frame, just try to keep everything organized. Even though mine doesn't really look organized right now, try to keep yours as organized as possible. We are ultimately going to be backplating this piece, so the back wire connections don't have to be perfect, but keep them as organized and as flush as possible. That's going to make the backplating a lot easier. And so now we're going to bend that wire at a 90-degree angle, so that way it is flush with the rest of the detailing, and utilizing the 30-gauge square, I am connecting it to the setting that we have just built for the Super 7 cabochon. The 21G square that was shooting off of the end of that as the outermost wire, that is now the innermost wire of these two connections. We are bringing those two 21G square together with the 30G round. I'm doing the same kind of pattern that I had done down there. I'm running the 30G on the outermost wire and then wrapping it over both of the wires to connect them together in a progression of 2 and then 3, and then I'm running that 30G round on the outermost wire only in between those connections, to give it kind of like, you know, that innermost wire, since it's not covered with a 30G, it gives it more of like a shiny kind of like, you know, straight look, while the 30G, when it's coiled around the 21G, kind of gives it more of like, I don't know, an etched look or something like that. Bringing these two wires together. I have also bent that that setting 21G square from the Super 7 cabochon. I bent that at a slight angle to bring it closer to this wire, and also to form it around the bottom of the opal, much like we did with the other section of 21G square that was near the opal earlier. Making some attachments on the back. Tying down the last bit of that channel setting that we had left, you know, the 21G square from that channel setting, we had left it kind of hanging on the top there. We've now attached that to the bottom frame. Everything's looking pretty good. I'm going to tighten up that angle just a little bit more. It makes a nice little opening there too at the top of that Super 7 cabochon that we can feed some other wires into. So I'm going to try to set this opal in here, and as you see, it kind of falls a little bit still. It doesn't sit exactly like we want it to, so we need to push it up just a little bit with some more wire connections at the base of the opal. Not applying any pressure to the stone, but just having them sit right next to that opening that we've designed for the opal. We're going to have those connections go down through the bottom there, just to help support that opal in. I'm tying down the outermost wire that I had on those two 21G square from the top part of the opal setting. So now I only have my innermost wire that runs along the opal shooting up to the top there. What I'm going to utilize is a length of 21G square, pushing it right underneath where that opal setting is and attaching it to the back. Once you have it attached to the back, you're ready to form your first swirl. I'm going to form just a simple swirl over this X weave that we've fanned open to the bottom of the opal. Once you've made a nice little swirl, I'm going to then clip off my excess and I'm going to feed it through that opening that we've just created with these top setting wires. I'm going to feed that 21G square through to the back and connect it to the frame. Again, yours might not look exactly like this if your main cabochon stone looks a little bit different or something like that, but you know, the idea is that you're going to feed your connections through at any point that you have opening down to the frame. So once we feed that wire through, we can connect it to the back, and we've made a nice little swirl there. I'm going to build another swirl on the inner side of that. You can see how that last wire kind of helped push up that stone just into its setting, kind of right where we want it to. Trying to find a nice opening down to the back. And once I find a nice spot to connect it down to the frame, I'm not going to feed it through that opening, but once I find a good spot, we're going to connect it down to the frame there. Off to the side just a little bit. Then I'm going to make my wire connection back to the frame. And once you have that length connected, I'm utilizing 22G round for this section. You can use whatever round wire or another length of square wire if you want. I'm going to run that in a same direction swirl as I did with this outermost swirl as the 21G square. Just run it on the inside of that. Then I'm going to clip off my extra and feed it through to the back. Forming my swirls a little bit more. Clip off my extra. You're ready to make your wire attachment to the back. You got to be careful when you lift up these swirls. Since you've formed a really nice neat swirl, you don't want to bend the wire up too much because it'll distort your swirl. So hold it down with your thumb and then try and angle the wire and push that tip through whichever connection point you're making to the back. And so that way your swirl will stay nice and formed in the way that you want it to, and it won't start to look all distorted since you had to lift up the wire to bend that point into the back. Once you've made your connection to the frame, that's it for this part of this start to finish tutorial. I do have a download or an upload limit each week, and so I can't make just like an hour-long tutorial for you all. I'd love to, but that'd be, a bit too much for the server. So as you can see on this opal, we do need to make just a couple more connections over on this side before it's fully set in, and we'll be doing that in the next part. We're going to be building a spiral weave detail to finish this off, and then a couple of more connecting lines and details before it's fully finished, and then we add the bail to the top, and then we go to polishing, oxidization, and backplating. So thank you all so much. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and have a great weekend.